I've got a Hallmark ornament today that I got for Christmas. It was a gift. And I was very surprised. It does not run on batteries, this one. It requires a dedicated power adapter. And Hallmark, being Hallmark, of course, they don't do USB. So I took this apart because this is the power adapter plug. It's a barrel type connector that they want. Hallmark wants $38 to power this thing. $38. All right. Amazon sells this whole thing for about $40. And obviously I'm not giving Hallmark $38 for their power adapter. There's some aftermarket adapters on Amazon for about $16, $17. But the key here is, if you look on the back, I'm not sure if the camera will pick this up correctly, this is 5 volts. Well, USB chargers for phones and other devices are 5 volts. So there was no reason that Hallmark could not have put a regular USB connector on the back of this so that the average person wouldn't have to go out and buy a power adapter. They could just plug it in as some power strip that they have that has USB ports on it, or a phone charger, whatever. So I have a lot of electronic gizmos around here, Arduino boards and other things, so I decided today I'm going to take one of these USB connectors that's a solder type. This is the USB-C connector that I used on this Hallmark ornament. There's a bunch of them out there, so you don't have to use this specific one, but I will put a link in the YouTube description for this particular board. And I'm going to solder this onto the base of this Hallmark ornament. There's a positive and negative leads on this barrel connector. And I'm just going to take a file, and I'm going to file one of these slots just a little bit longer, so it's a little bit wider. It needs to be just a little bit taller. And then I'm going to glue it onto one of the back slots here. And then this plate here that goes in the middle of this whole thing will have to have a notch put in it to clear that USB port. But this way it can be powered off of a standard USB adapter. I don't have to spend $16, $17 or $38 for the Hallmark adapter, which is really, I think, a crime. Hallmark needs to wake up. Everybody's doing USB charging today and USB power devices. There is no reason to make a proprietary connector in this day and age, especially since this is already 5 volts. So I'm going to file this open, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how I'm going to adapt this to this base plate here. Alright, so I took an X-Acto knife blade and cut out the bottom of this slot a little bit, and then I took a small file and I cleaned it up. And I mean, it's not a nice cut, but I don't really care. It's the back of the unit. You're never going to see it. And this thing just sits in there. This is not in any way fastened in. So this is good. This will come out. I'm going to desolder the red and black leads and solder them to this connector here. So by removing this piece here, there's a nice little resting spot that this board can sit on and have a little bit of strength to it. And it's actually fairly level. It doesn't seem to be sitting in there at an angle too much. So I'm going to just make sure the power cord from the USB cord that I've got fits in there. It isn't blocked in any way. And then I'm just going to glue this in, and once the glue dries, I'll move the wires over. Okay, so I glued a piece of scrap wood that I had in there. It was about 1/16 of an inch thick. And I used some super glue and some baking soda. You don't want to just super glue it to that thin piece of wall there. It's not strong enough. So the baking soda acts as a fillet. And just a caution, when you put a few drops of super glue on that baking soda, keep it away from your face. It has a nasty fume that comes out of it. So just keep it away from you when you put those few drops in there. That performs a pretty nice strong base here. I don't think this is going to go anywhere. I'm not going to use super glue to put this in. Super glue tends to be kind of brittle, and since you'll be putting the connector in and out on this a few times, I feel more comfortable using epoxy. So I've got some 5-minute epoxy laying around. I'm going to use that to glue this in. But I'm going to first move the wires over and make sure this works out okay. Alright, so I plugged the USB in just to make sure it works. And as you can see, the LEDs are on. And if you press the button in the front,
I am C3PO, Human-Cyborg Relations.
So
and this is...
it talks. Alright, so for gluing, as I said, this is not glued down yet, just a piece of wood is glued down. And I'm going to probably glue this down with some 5-minute epoxy. I think that's a pretty good glue. If you don't have epoxy, you could probably use Goop or E6000 if you've got that laying around. That should be fine. But super glue, I think, is too brittle, and when you push that connector in and out, I think the super glue could possibly let go. So I'm going to give that a shot, and we'll see how that works out. Alright, the next part I made a mistake on. I'm going to call this the diffuser. I think it's really just here to make the lights glow a certain way through these cutouts. I thought it went on this way, and I had cut out a section, but it turns out it goes on this way. So these posts here, they get screwed down to here, and so it actually goes on this way. So you have to cut out a fairly large section so it clears that USB connector. With a Dremel tool, it's pretty easy. A pair of Lexan scissors would also cut that out. So we'll screw that down, and those screws are slightly shorter than these screws that hold R2D2 and C3PO down. So there's just 2 of them here to hold that in place. Alright, so I screwed the base back together. Here's what it looks like. So now you can plug a USB cable into the back, USB-C cable, and then plug this into a standard phone-like charger. Or maybe you have one of those power bricks like I have on my workbench here. It has 6 ports on the back, so you can power various devices.
R2D2, where are you?
And there we go. So what happens is, when this thing is just plugged in, it has several lights on it. But then if you press the button, then it makes various sounds from the movie. So I think this is just a lot better for a couple of reasons. I'm really ticked off at Hallmark for thinking it's right to charge almost $40 for a power adapter. And a lot of people today have USB power bricks, or they have power strips. My power strips all have USB power ports on them. So there's just no reason for Hallmark to have to charge almost another $40 just to power up this little gizmo.